And they call it a foot, but my foot isn't a foot. I mean, it's a foot, but it's not a foot. So what actually is a foot if not my foot? As we've discussed before, we need consistent units if we want our measurements to mean anything outside of the room where we take them, or heck, even inside the room. This is why we calibrate our equipment to meet agreed upon standards. But how did we end up with these standards in the first place? Let's take a trip back in time. The year is 1904. The place? Baltimore, Maryland. Over the course of just 2 days, a fire would consume the city, totally destroying or severely damaging thousands of buildings. Fire crews came from all over, DC, Philadelphia, New York, everywhere, trying to stop the fire's spread, but they ran into a major problem. Their hose couplings didn't fit the Baltimore hydrants. Because the sizes weren't standardized, the crews struggled to fight the fire. Thankfully, no lives were lost directly, but the city was devastated, to the tune of what would nowadays be about $4 billion in damage. And a lot of that destruction could have been prevented by implementing functional standards. So we can probably agree that standardized measurement is important, but where do standardized units come from? Let's take a trip even further back in time. For as long as people have traded stuff, they've been finding ways to quantify that stuff. Over thousands of years, people have used thousands of different measuring units, usually based on something convenient. They used cubits, hands, feet, all things that were super easy to use for measuring, but that vary from person to person. There were some attempts at standardization in the 17th century, but they didn't really catch on. No one likes pendulums. In France, La Révolution vived, and the French government tasked the Academy of Sciences to come up with a new standard for linear measurement. This effort was headed by Jean-Charles de Borda, who loved him some decimalization. The new measuring unit, le mètre, would be 1/10,000,000th the distance from the North Pole to the equator as measured through the longitude line that passes through Paris. And instead of manually measuring the distance from the North Pole to the equator, the surveyors would just measure 2 points along that line and extrapolate. Handily, the cities of Dunkirk and Barcelona, Spain both fell along that line. So from 1792 to 1798, the surveyors measured between the two cities. A bunch of math later and boom, the meter was born. A physical standard was made for reference. Folks all around started adopting the metric system, and the rest is history. I mean, the first part was also history, but you know what I mean. Trouble is, the measurement wasn't quite right. Turns out the meter we know is not 1/10,000,000th the distance from the North Pole to the equator. It's off by 2/10 of a millimeter, or about 8/1000 of an inch, which, I mean, not bad for the 18th century. Consequently, since 1983, we've been defining the meter as the distance light travels in a vacuum in 1/299,792,458 of a second as timed by a cesium-133 atomic clock. As for the question earlier about the foot, it was a unit used by folks all over since the Stone Age, and then gradually as cultures expanded and overlapped, they standardized it. The point is that once you define a standard, it can be referenced and used uniformly everywhere. We reference a standard by using carefully built artifacts that represent a master standard and comparing against these. For example, the original meter was represented by a platinum bar that people compared against and made copies of. Nowadays, in our chain of traceability back to official standards, we have much more sophisticated artifacts and methods. Things like gauge blocks, linear scales, laser interferometers. Should I not? It took a long time to get here, but because we have functional standards across all of metrology, we can now take the most accurate measurements in all of human history, and those values can be replicated anywhere in the world. Actually, with my shoe on, it's pretty close to a foot.